Hello everyone. We are here today to do something that I think is incredibly important and I would say absolutely necessary. We are going to be doing a detailed, deranged deep dive, a DDDD, you might say, into The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. So if you've ever wondered why this mega viral series has so many fans, so many fan edits, and is often upheld as one of the greatest YA fantasy series with the enemies to lovers trope in it, then maybe taking a look at the plot of the series will give you a better insight into its popularity. This video and the mess behind me that I have created is obviously inspired by a lot of creators that came before me. So huge thank you to Mike's Mike, Jenny Nicholson, Carrie Can Read, and so many more that inspired me to do something and spend this much time on a project. I do want to point out off the top that this book does discuss some surprisingly dark themes and has some pretty dark moments. So I've listed the trigger warnings down below in the description. So if you're worried about it at all, check those out for sure. I also want to take a moment to thank all of the incredible artists that are allowing me to use their work for this video. I am so genuinely honored to get to use their work for this, and they are all so talented. I'm going to put their usernames up on the screen, and there will also be more information about them down below in the description, including the specifics on which artists did which of these pictures and where you can find them online. Okay. For a little bit of background, the Folk of the Air series is made up of 3 novels and 2 novellas, and today we are only going to be covering the first book in the series, which is The Cruel Prince, which began changing lives and turning readers into furries one by one when it was released in 2018. Okay, no, I'm not a furry, but I am a Carden's Tale truther, and you can't take that away from me, okay? I also want to take a second to set the scene a little bit here. This is a fantasy series, and it takes place in fairyland, but not fairyland. So we're not really talking about the Tinkerbell sort of fae here, but we're also not really talking about the kind of like beefed up, steroid juicing, pumped fae that you'll find in other stories either. I would say that this brand of fairy is more along the lines of like a Timothée Chalamet vibe, you know, like a little bit sickly, a little bit inhuman, but hot in a way that you can't quite figure out, but is undeniable nonetheless. Also, if the lighting just changed, I am using natural lighting, so I really apologize, and I'm really praying that you can see what's behind me right now. Anyway, this story is a little bit complicated. There's a lot going on. I wanted it to be as easy to follow along with as possible, so let me just give you a little bit of context here. Basically, the wall here is organized by like the natural groupings of people. So for example, our main character Jude over here is kind of grouped together with her family, and there's a royal family and they're all grouped together up there. But it will all kind of make sense as we meet the characters and go along. They're also generally in the place that they would be in Elfame, because this behind me is my version of a map of Elfame that was originally drawn by Kathleen Jennings. Thank you. So if you're like, oh, why are some of them over there and some of them over there? Check out that map. It'll explain some things. If we happen to lose any of our characters along this journey, I will be giving them a little dagger icon like that, so that we will know that sadly they are no longer with us. Over here, in this empty space, we have a mystery character here. At the center of this story, there's kind of this puzzle going along that our main girl Jude is trying to figure out along the way, and we get a lot of clues and hints and puzzle pieces as we go. So each time we come across one of these puzzle pieces, I'm going to be adding them onto this space like so. That way we can keep track of everything, so when the whole puzzle comes together, we'll understand what's been going on. We'll be keeping up and following along. And lastly, we have this fun little guy, which I am calling Jude's brain jar. So our main character, Jude, is a little bit of an overthinker. And throughout the story, she has these interactions and thoughts and moments that she keeps returning to over and over again as the series goes on. And so I thought for us to understand Jude's mindset as we go along, every time we come across one of these moments, I'm going to add a few marbles into Jude's brain jar. So that way, at the end, we can see how full Jude's brain is as she loses her marbles. I'm working here. You know what I mean? I'm working here. Okay, without further ado, let's begin. So each book in this series is divided into parts that are marked with a poem. And I thought I would read the poems to you because they're very pretty. And they're not like poems written by a character or anything. It's like real poems by real people, you know what I mean? So we begin part 1 with I'd Love to Be a Fairy's Child by Robert Graves. Children born of fairy stock never need for shirt or frock, never want for food or fire, always get their heart's desire. Jingle pockets full of gold, merry when they're 7 years old. Every fairy child may keep 2 strong ponies and 10 sheep. All have houses, each his own, built of brick or granite stone. They live on cherries, they run wild. I'd love to be a fairy's child. And then we're given a prologue that really sets the tone and the foundation of the series as a whole. We meet our main character, Jude, a very normal 7-year-old girl in a very normal suburban home, eating fish sticks and ketchup and watching TV with her sisters. They are a bit of a strange bunch, though, because Jude happens to have an identical twin named Taryn, and they have a half older sister named Vivian, who has pointed ears. So even though we start in this very mundane setting, there's still a sense of magic underlying the story. This feeling only escalates when a stranger who looks like he just stepped out of a fairy tale knocks on the door, and little Jude opens it. But as soon as her mother, Eva over here, sees who it is, the tone shifts. She's like, Jude, hide now. And then we get a very cryptic conversation between this stranger and Jude's mother. It kind of feels like we're stepping in on something with a long history, like it's half finished. There's clearly a lot between this stranger and Jude's mom that we don't know about. So in their conversation, we learn a few things that are going to play a major role in the way that our story unfolds. 1, he is not a human. 2, Jude's mother and this strange man used to be married before she 3, faked her death while she was pregnant with the eldest sister, Vivian. And 4, someone named Bailkin told Maddock where he would find his not-so-dead wife and their not-so-dead child. But before these 2 unlikely exes can rehash very much of their past, Jude's father, Justin, walks in through the back door holding an axe. And no questions asked. No questions asked. He takes a swing at this stranger. Ooh, looks like it's a swing and a miss. Yeah, and in a very beautifully villainous moment, I would say, the stranger unsheathes his own sword and plunges it into the stomach of Jude's father. I'm just gonna... really quick. Okay. This kind of starts the chaos. Everybody's screaming, everybody's scared. The stranger is seeing his daughter that he thought was dead for the first time, and he's like, come to me, and she's just terrified, like, oh my god, no, I just watched you kill my dad. And the mother, who is horrified and scared, starts to back away when the stranger says, do not run from me, not after what you've done. But run she does, and so he throws his bloodied sword at her, straight through the back. It's getting dark in here, people. I think that this is one of like the most gruesome scenes in the series. So what a way to start us off. Like, this is only the prologue. In the immediate aftermath, this stranger announces to the girls that he will be taking them to Elfame to raise them in wealth and riches among the Fae. And we get a taste at the budding relationship that each of these 3 girls are going to have with this man in the future. Vivian, his biological daughter, refuses to do what he says and declares that she'll hate him forever. Little Jude begins to beat her baby fists against his chest until he kind of grips her in a hold to make her stop. And Taryn just cries over the body of their dead mother. And then the girls, with no other choice, pack their things, hop on some magical horses, and leave the mortal world and everything that they've ever known behind. Chapter 1. In Fairy, there are no fish sticks, no ketchup, no television. Oh my god, it gives me chills every time. That's it. That's the whole chapter 1. So few words that say so much. Moving right on to chapter 2, we have a bit of a time jump here, and our girl Jude is now 17 years old, and she has been raised as the adopted daughter of Maddock, the man who just murdered her parents in the prologue. Maddock is a specific type of creature called a red cap, which basically just means that he's born to crave violence. And red caps usually specialize in like fighting and war. We don't get a ton of specifics on Jude's time growing up in Fairy between the prologue and now, but we do get the sense that it is not easy for a human child to live in Elfame. The Fae are a completely different species. They operate on completely different rules. They have magic, like they can enchant you to do whatever they say unless you have certain protections on, and they can never tell a lie and things like that kind of make it difficult for a mortal girl to assimilate into this world. So to survive in Fairy, Jude and her sister Taryn have both had to have a lot of protections in place, like special ointment on their eyes to give them true sight through little glamours, and they have to have berries of protection and salt in their pockets and stockings on inside out, etc., etc. And it's still an unbelievably dangerous place for them to be. Like, even with all of the protections, that it only offers them a modicum of safety. But even though she is constantly on the edge of danger, a lot of people in her life like to remind her of how lucky she is because she's been raised as Maddock's daughter. And Maddock here is the High King's General, so big war daddy energy going on. And that means that Jude and Taryn and Vivi got to be raised among like all the other rich kids and the royals. So they're kind of judged harshly because not only are they adopted into this life, but they're also humans. They're not even fae. And this dynamic has kind of led to this inner conflict that Jude has, where she feels like she's not good enough to have a place in this world and be taken seriously. And so as in this chapter, she gets ready for a ball that they're going to this evening, she explains to readers that there are 2 ways that you can earn your place in the court of Fairyland. 1, you can marry into it, or 2, you can have a special skill and earn your place. Like, you could be a really good fighter, or a really good violinist, or a really good blacksmith. And Jude here wants to take that second path and earn her place, and she just so happens to be 4 days away from a major tournament that might help her do just that. But more on that soon. One of the other major dynamics that's set up here that I want to mention is between Daddy Maddock and Jude, because even though Maddock did murder her biological parents and then steal her away to Fairyland, he then raised her as his daughter. So like, he read her bedtime stories, and she sat on his lap at dinner time and ate food off of his plate, and all of these things that made her love him even if it felt like she shouldn't. So we do have a case of daddy issues going on here. So while Jude's getting ready for the ball tonight, her twin sister Taryn walks in, and we get to see what the last 10 years in Fairy have done to her. And we kind of get the sense that even though they're identical twins, their vibes are a little different. Like, Taryn is kind of more of like soft princess goody two-shoes vibe, and Jude is a little edgier, a little harder around the edges. It's almost like they are foils. So the twins head downstairs to leave for the party, and they come across Vivi, who is not dressed for the party because, as we know, she mentioned that she was never going to do anything that Maddock says and hate him forever. So she does not attend courtly events when she can, as long as it will annoy or disappoint her father Maddock. She's pretty much on board, so she's not going tonight. But Oriana here, on the other hand, who is Maddock's new wife, and she's very prim and proper and step-monster vibes, she is always ready to go to a ball. And she has kind of a tense relationship with the 3 sisters. Like, she's always nagging at them and has never really loved them like a mother would, in the way that Maddock loved them as a father would, you know? We also get to meet their baby brother, Oak. Oak is the son of Oriana and Maddock, and he is kind of like your favorite little menace. You know what I mean? Like, he's so cute and sweet, and he's like your little baby brother, but of course he'll like kick and scratch like the menace that he is. I love him. He's very sweet. He's also kind of played a part in the tense family dynamic because Oriana has always been really, really protective of him and doesn't really love the girls being around him, even though they consider him family, like their little brother. They love him. Oriana's always like, why are you with Oak? Leave him alone. Stop annoying your brother. And now that we've met the whole loving family, we make our way to the Palace of Elfame for the party. And also, more character introductions. Get ready. If there is one thing that Miss Holly Black loves, it is a dash of fanciful description. So when you go into this party, she tells us that there are creatures of all types, redcaps, fairies, goblins, grigs, imps, etc. There are wings and animals and people dressed in feathers and armor and jewels and magnificence abound. So people don't play around here. Well, they do, actually, but it's kind of a problem. So everyone in the family takes their turn as they go into the party, bowing to the High King Eldred to pay their respects. The High King Eldred has 6 children, and the oldest 3 are kind of like the big political players here. They've each developed their own following, or circles. So I'm going to go through them and just get these introductions out of the way. Also, I couldn't really find art of the royal family, so I used Succession characters because it matches the vibe, but don't pay too much attention to the familial relations of the characters that I'm using to represent them because it won't make a ton of sense. It just matches the vibe. You just have to get the vibe. Anyway, the oldest son, Baelkin, is over here, and he is the leader of the Circle of Grackles, which is kind of like the drugs, sex, and rock and roll crew. That's his vibe. Then back over here, we have Princess Elowen, and she is the leader of the Circle of Larks, which are kind of the artsy group. And then third, we have Prince Dane here, repped by my favorite boy, Kendall. Dane is the leader of the Circle of Falcons, and they are known as the Warriors, the Knights. And that's actually the circle that Madoc is a part of. So Madoc and Dane are thick as thieves. I tried to cross my fingers. Then for the youngest 3 siblings, we have Princess Raya, Princess Celia, and last but not least, Prince Carden. Some might say the cruelest prince. Sweet Carden here is known as having a bad attitude and a tail. And I would say that he's probably the most quintessential Chalamet fairy here. I think for a while, Timothée Chalamet was like the fan cast for Carden. All you really need to know at the moment is that he is always dressed to the nines, and Jude hates him passionately. So in addition to a great sense of fashion, Carden here has a little posse of like evil besties, and they're all about the same age as Jude and Taryn, so they all go to class together, the like fairy version of school. Friend 1 is Valerian over here. He's very red-coded, not like the Taylor Swift album, but more like the color, ruby red, blood, death, kind of on the edge of sanity vibes. Then we have Nicasia, who's down here in the sea because she is the princess of the sea. And as such, she's very blue-coded, very mean girl, beautiful, blue. And last but not least is Locke up here, and he's not really a color so much as he is an animal. Locke is very foxy. Even his hair is like described as being the color of fox fur, and he loves a good little prank. He's sneaky, he's sly, he smirks, he's very foxy. So Carden and his little squad are making their way through the party, and Jude is like, God, I just hope they walk by me, don't notice me, I don't want any attention. Oop, but of course, Valerian here grabs her hair, pulls her back, and reminds her pretty much how ugly she is as a mortal girl in fairyland. Very nice. In the meantime, Carden here is standing with a moth boy who's like refusing to bow to him even though he's a prince of Elfame. The moth boy's just kind of laughing in his face, and so Carden reaches out and rips off one of his wings, dropping it to the ground and walking away like nothing happened. What a cruel prince, am I right? This intro to Carden's character definitely does show how he's perceived in the court, but it also shows us how different the Fae are from humans, because after this like act of cruelty, nobody really reacts, no one cares, they just go on with their party because this isn't something that's really shocking to see in fairyland. But oh, what's this? Jude sees Locke, Carden's fox friend, helping the moth boy up. And when Locke notices her noticing him, he gives her a little wink. Interesting. Jude is like, oh, what? And Taryn kind of pulls her over aggressively and is like, don't bring their attention on us. We don't want their attention. Things are going to get bad. Don't make things bad. And it seems like that anger from Taryn almost came out of nowhere. But we don't have time to dig into it right now because the party is at its end. Jude is back in her bedroom, getting ready for bed and feeling drained with the weight of not knowing how to deal with her childhood trauma while she lives in the luxurious home of her parents' murderer. And also with the stress of knowing that in 4 days, there's a tournament that could determine the future of her life in fairyland. Because at this tournament, she will potentially have the opportunity to become a knight. And if she doesn't, then all of her dreams will be crushed and she will have no future. Also, quick side note, I feel like I should mention that the days in fairyland are kind of swapped. So like our version of midnight where we'd be tired would be like midday, noon for them. So they're like almost nocturnal, kind of. So Jude goes to sleep, she sleeps through the day, and then she gets up that night and gets ready to go to class, the like fairy version of school, which is a perk of being raised by the High King's General because you get to go to class with all the rich kids where they hate you for not being born into your riches, as if they did anything to earn it. So off Jude and Taryn go to the palace, which is where their lessons are going to be held in like an open field. And Jude is feeling a little bit distracted in class today. So we get a little bit more information about this tournament that's coming up. Basically, there's going to be like a mock war, almost capture the flag style, but with like swords and armor. And if you stand out during this tournament, then one of the royal children can pick you to join their personal guard and you can become a knight, thus earning your place in fairy. But you basically have to have like your parents' permission to become a knight in this tournament, and Jude has not asked Matic for permission yet, even though it's like 3 days away now. When the class gets a little break for lunch, Jude and Taryn spread their food out in a nice little picnic, only for Prince Carden to come over and kick dirt all over their food. Jude is, of course, immediately furious, as she should be, but she manages to bite her tongue until Princess Nicasia comes and gets involved. She starts making fun of them and telling them that they should eat the dirty food because they come from the dirt anyway. And our angry girl Jude tosses out a classic, "Make me." But this pushback kind of only delights the evil little posse, and so Carden smiles and he's like, I could make you if I wanted to, because again, fairies have magic, and he could, unless she's wearing her like rowan berries of protection. Valerian also jumps in on the opportunity to mess with the girls. He kicks more dirt on their food and tries to get Jude to fight him, and Nicasia ends up making another comment basically about how ugly Jude is as a mortal, and it makes Jude pause and look at the four of them and just be so angry that such awful people could be so beautiful. And we have the first appearance of an iconic Jude Carden line that if you've seen a lot of Jude Carden content around, you've probably seen. Jude looks at Carden and thinks, I hate him more than all the others. I hate him so much that sometimes when I look at him, I can hardly breathe. Like, if you want to do enemies to lovers, this is enemies. And I know that at this point, Carden really just seems like an obnoxious, bratty prince, but it's the kind of thing you have to wait for. Just hold out for him, okay? Anyway, Carden and his friends continue their little tirade against the twins, Taryn and Jude, and Carden ends up saying that Jude should drop out of that summer tournament that's coming up. But Jude does not give in. She just digs her little heels in and says, oh, are you afraid I'll win? And then Taryn steps in and is like, okay, guys, I'll talk to her. Don't worry about it. I'll see if I can get her to drop out. And that's kind of enough to make them walk away for now. But we're definitely left with the feeling that war has begun. This was just the first battle. It was only the beginning. And then as soon as they are gone, Taryn is pissed. She's like, Jude, what are you doing? Why are you goading them into more fighting? And Jude is like, listen, I have a temper. It's a little hard to control sometimes. And Taryn is like, girl, you should not be angry. You should be afraid. And then we have one of my personal favorite paragraphs, which I will not read to you, but it's kind of this moment where Jude's entire mindset shifts because she starts to think about fear. And she's like, I am afraid. I'm afraid of everything, but if I let that fear control me, then I would live my life hiding under Maddox's bed and I would never leave, and I don't want that to be my fate. So she doesn't want to just be good enough to prove that she can be equal to the Fae. She wants to prove that she's better than them. Okay, girl boss, While our girls are walking back from class, they have a little post-fight confrontation, and the divide between these sisters becomes much more clear because if you'll remember, the other path that Jude does not want to take to get a place in court is to get married, and Taryn reveals that she's decided she's going to fall in love, so these twin sisters are taking opposite paths. Taryn also brings up the fact that Jude has still not told Maddox that she wants to compete to be a knight in the tournament, and that she really needs to because Taryn does not think that Maddox is going to let her. We'll have to see. When the girls get home, they find Vivi, who's in a full panic because her closet has a sprite infestation. And Jude sees that Vivi has like a whole closet full of things from the mortal world, but one of these things stands out to her. It's a strip of photo booth pictures of Vivi and a pink-haired girl, and they look very much in love, and Jude thinks, oh, maybe Taryn isn't the only one who's decided to fall in love. Everyone's in love around here these days. Then we have a nice little family dinner going on, and we find out that this is a very interesting time in the politics of Elfame, because High King Eldred is feeling a little bit old and has decided that it's time to give up his throne to one of his children. And that is why we have this crown here, because a huge part of this story is the question of who's going to end up with that crown on their head. And we will find out. It's called the Blood Crown, and it can only be passed down to somebody with Greenbrier blood in their veins. And everyone in the kingdom swears their loyalty to the crown a little bit more so than the person wearing the crown. We also find out that it isn't necessarily the eldest heir that takes the throne. High King Eldred gets to pick which of his 6 children are going to succeed him. So just because Prince Baelkin here is the oldest, it doesn't mean he gets the crown. Everyone actually thinks that Prince Dane is going to get the crown and be the next High King. But really no one will know until Coronation Day, so we'll have to wait and see. War Daddy Maddox over here seems very excited about the political change coming up because he feels like there's not enough war in this kingdom. And maybe with a new ruler, there will be more war for him to wage, which is just charming. And then Maddox cryptically tells his family not to worry about this upcoming change because he has a plan to ensure their futures. And this is our first brain jar moment. Just gonna... Yeah. Miss Taryn here takes this dinner as an opportunity to pull a "Dad, Jude has something to tell you" card, forcing Jude to finally ask Maddox whether or not she can try to be a knight in the tournament coming up. And lo and behold, he says, "You're no killer." Yeah, okay. That is like a knife to the chest for Jude to hear because she has been dreaming about being a knight. And so she tries to explain that she's really serious about this, but he kind of just turns her down again and says, I've made up my mind. Ask me again after the coronation, and then maybe I'll reevaluate. So Jude, like all of us that put our self-worth into our academic achievements, is feeling crushed. But what we mainly need to take away from this dinner is Maddox's continuous emphasis that he has a plan, that change is coming. And he gives us another Maddox saying that will stick with us till the bitter end. He says, "A well-seasoned strategist waits for the right opportunity." Hold on. It's like putting daddy issues into a jar. That night, Jude takes a little bit of a walk where she kind of just reflects and thinks about her mom and like reaffirms the decision that she made in class that day, which is that she is done making herself small so that she can fit in and please the royals. The next day, right away, Jude pulls Taryn aside and she's like, "Please don't come to class today." And if you're thinking, oh no, what is she gonna do? Then you're thinking the exact same thing as Taryn, because she's like, now I have to come to class. What's going on? Jude's first act in her new era is to get a little bit of revenge by smothering Carden and his friends' food with salt. So that way they won't want to eat it and they'll know that she's the one that did it. And then we have another very intense Jude Carden stare down where Jude maniacally smiles at him just to punctuate this goodbye to her good girl life. We've now reached chapter 6, which is a very interesting chapter because it's different than all of the the others. In this chapter, Jude breaks the fourth wall a little bit to tell us 3 things that she left out of the beginning of the story. The first thing she tells us is a story about one of Maddox's guards and how when she was little, the guard bit off the tip of one of her fingers and told her that if she ever told anyone what he did, then he would eat the rest of her too. The second thing is that when she was 11 and she was at one of the many fairy parties, she got pulled into a dance by one of the fairies, and if a human starts to dance in fairyland, they are not able to physically stop dancing until a fairy pulls them out of it, so it can be very dangerous. And little Jude got stuck in a dance for hours and hours until Princess Elowen actually finds her and drags her back to Oriana, her step monster, and neither of them ever tell Maddox what happened that day. And then third, she tells us about when she was 14 and baby brother Oak was 4, and Oak really didn't want to go to bed one night. He wanted to stay up and play, and so he enchanted Jude to play with him. When he realized that he could make her do whatever he wanted, he enchanted her to slap herself in the face over and over. Eventually, hours later, someone found them and put a stop to it, and it never happened again after that because Jude always has on rowan berries of protection so that she cannot be enchanted. At the end of the chapter, Jude kind of explains to us that the reason she left those stories out from the beginning is because they make her seem really, really vulnerable. She says, "No matter how careful I am, eventually I'll make another mistake. I am weak, I am fragile, I am mortal." Time and time again in this series, we are reminded at the difference between fae and humans. And in this instance, obviously that difference is emphasized, but we also get to see how Jude's awareness of that difference has defined the person that she's become in the last 10 years. And how fighting to no longer be someone defined by that fear is like her biggest driving motivator at this point. Sometimes it's a tough read. Our girl has been through a lot, but back into the thick of things because Cardan is not just going to let Jude get away with this. So on the same day that Jude salted their food, they strike back. While Jude and Taryn are walking home from class that day, Cardan and his friends jump out of the woods, grab them, and drag them to a river where they then get shoved in, where there are all of these creatures called nixies waiting for easy prey to catch in the river. They're like dumping all their school bags out and yelling at them and making fun of them. And Cardan tells Jude once again that she should drop out of the tournament. And there's also this interesting moment here where Cardan seems like genuinely curious about mortals, and he's asking Jude and Taryn all of these questions. Like, he asks if being an identical twin is more like being doubled or being halved, things like that. And he also asks Jude if she would give up being in the tournament for her sister's sake, and kind of tests the boundary between the twins. He then gives Taryn a deal of her own. He says that if she kisses him on both cheeks and swears to do nothing to defend Jude with word or deed, then they'll let Taryn go and they'll forgive her. Jude does the noble thing, of course, and she's like, "Taryn, take the deal. Get out of here. I can handle myself. I got this." And so Taryn's like, "Okay," and she takes the deal. And even though Jude told her to, she's like, ouch. Cardan, of course, loves that he's found this little bit of weakness between the two sisters and starts goading Jude about how she'll never be able to beat them because she's just immortal. He kind of looks around at this revenge that he's gotten on the sisters and he says, "This is the least of what we can do." After that fun little moment, we have a little bit of a change in pace because our sister Vivi demands that it's time for the girls to go to the mall. That's right, in the mortal world. So Taryn and Jude put on these like god-awful outfits, and I'm pretty sure it's intentional. I'm gonna pretend that it is for my own sanity. And the 3 sisters hop on some magical horses and head over to the mortal world. You might be wondering, Paige, if it's that easy for them to go to the mortal world, why didn't they just run away when they were kids? Well, let me tell you really quick, they tried that. And it didn't go well. It was actually a very dark day for all 3 of them, so we don't really talk about it. When they get to the mall, Jude and Taryn have a nice little sisterly moment and apologize to each other. Jude for starting a war that they probably will not win, and Taryn for forsaking her sister to save herself. And then we get to meet Vivi's secret girlfriend. Vivi drops the bomb on the 2 sisters that she is dating this girl, Heather, and they are planning on moving in together. Very lesbian core. We love it. The catch here is that sweet little Heather has no idea that Vivi is a fairy. Oh boy. Vivi also says that she wants Jude and Taryn to move in with them and get away from all of the chaos of fairy. And the twins are like, what are you talking about? And Vivi is like, guys, our father killed our parents, our stepmother kind of hates you, and some of the most influential fae in the court want you dead. She says the folk are going to keep treating you like crap. Okay, both of the twins are kind of like, yeah, I think I'd rather stay in fairyland. Which Vivi does not understand, but that's okay. And then we officially get to meet Heather. She is described as like a very artsy, cool girl, and like she would fall in love with a fairy girl accidentally. You know what I mean? So our four girls here grab a little coffee, have a little gab, and we find out that Heather thinks that they have conservative parents, and that's why Vivi's afraid to tell them that she's dating a girl, which gives me a little bit of a laugh because Maddox would not care about his children's sexuality, but he would not be happy that Vivi was dating a human. And there's something about like the conservative dad image that is just so adjacent to Maddox's character, so close to being perfect, that it makes me giggle a little. What can I say? So this whole mall adventure ends with this random guy hitting on Jude. And what's her response to this? Oh yeah, to punch him in the face, which is just fantastic. And it kind of acts as this moment to show that Jude really would never fit into the mortal world and that fairy is where she belongs. Funny little chapter there. Okay, people, we are 1 day away from the tournament and we are back at class. Nothing very exciting happens though. It's pretty normal. It's after class when Jude notices that Taryn and Carden are off to the side and Taryn is crying, like big tears crying. Jude kind of goes like sister mode. She's angry about it. And all she can think about are Maddox's words. You're no killer. So she stomps over, she shoves Carden, and she tells him off. And his response is just to smile and say, you're going to regret doing that. So if war hadn't started already, it has definitely started now. Anyway, Taryn refuses to tell Jude why she was crying and just begs her to drop out of this tournament. And Jude is like, if you think for 1 second that I am giving up an opportunity to pummel that little shithead into the ground, you're kidding yourself. Absolutely not. I will be competing. And then the time of the tournament is upon us. And also, let me clarify really quickly, Maddox said she can't compete to be a knight, but she can still participate. So she can fight and capture the flag. It just doesn't matter how well she does, because nobody can pick her to be a knight. But back to it. So Jude, on her way out to head to the tournament, runs into Maddox, and they have this kind of tense moment, because Maddox is trying to be the understanding father figure, and he knows that he's not letting Jude do what she wants. But they're both kind of aware of the fact that they're not really father and daughter, and there isn't really anything either of them can do to change the strangeness of their relationship. So Jude just tries to shrug it off, as per usual, and bury any indication of feeling underground with like a 10-foot pole. Okay, so this tournament, it's not like the biggest deal, but it's kind of a big deal. Like, a lot of the royal family will be there to watch. So even though Jude is feeling kind of down about not being able to officially become a knight if she does well enough, she's still kind of glad that they'll get to see her fight in the first place. And then they get to fighting. And honestly, after all of the build-up, I gotta say, not much really happens. I think the key things we need to take away from here are that Carden makes a comment about Taryn. He says, "Not that I'd be the first to green gown her," which implies that Taryn has found a little fairy lover and has been keeping it a secret. Just gonna grab a couple of these. And then the other main takeaway is that Jude fights really hard and her team actually ends up winning 2-1. But she doesn't really feel great about the day because Maddox didn't stay to watch the whole thing and no one really seemed that impressed with her performance. But when the fight is over, Prince Carden is pissed. He does not like to lose, so he grabs Jude by the throat and tells her that she should beg for his forgiveness. And she starts to get down on her knees to do it, but then she's like, I cannot do this. I physically cannot beg for Prince Cardan's forgiveness. So she stands back up and she says, "You remind me that I am a mere mortal, and you are a prince of fairy. Well, let me remind you, that means you have much to lose and I have nothing. You may win in the end. You may ensorcel me and hurt me and humiliate me, but I will make sure that you lose everything I can take from you on the way down. I promise you this. This is the least of what I can do." Chills! I have chills! She threw his words back in his face. I wrote in my notes, she gagged him a bit there. But yeah, throwing his words back at him in front of his whole family, she's on a bit of a rampage. Oh, wait, who is it that comes to check on her? Is it her sisters, maybe? Or perhaps a concerned adult? No, it's foxy little Locke. There he is. Locke tells her a little secret, that he, in fact, enjoys the feud that Jude has going on with Cardan at the moment because no one else seems to be able to put Cardan in his place like Jude. And suddenly Jude realizes that she has a little bit of an admirer, and he has a very pretty smile. After the tournament, things start to pick up a little bit here. One of Maddox's servants comes and tells Jude that the prince is waiting for her, and she's like, "Oh my god, it's Prince Cardan. He's come for more revenge. I'm so dead." But when she gets to Maddox's office to meet the prince, it's not Cardan who's waiting for her there. It's Prince Dane, the third-born heir who everyone thinks Eldred will crown at the coronation. Jude has no idea why he would want to talk to her, but it seems like she did manage to impress someone at the tournament that day. Prince Dane ends up doing this whole song and dance with her where he asks her to lie to him because fairies cannot lie and humans can, so it's like kind of amazing to them that she can just say whatever she wants. And he recognizes the power potential and the opportunity there, and so he offers Jude a little bit of a bargain. If Jude becomes a spy for him, then he will give Jude a geese of resistance that will make it so that no word from any fairy will ever be able to control her, whether or not she has any sort of protection on. She will be safe from fairy magic. And by serving Dane, she would be getting to serve the crown, which is really what she wanted as a knight in the first place. Being a spy is not exactly what Jude wanted. It's not like the noble life she had hoped for, but it does sound like kind of a sick deal. So she's like, yeah, okay, I'll take it here and now. So she gets down on one knee and she swears her loyalty to Prince Dane. And he gives her the geese of her dreams. No fairy will be able to glamour her, mess with her head, move her body against her will. No fairy other than the maker of this geese, of course. There it is, everyone. There is the catch. Prince Dane will still be able to control Jude with fairy magic. And Jude is like, okay, if that's the catch, I can deal with it, since I'll be working for him anyway. At family dinner that night, Jude is feeling like she's holding on to the biggest and best secret in the world, as everyone's eating around her like normal, and no one knows that she's a spy. It's honestly very endearing if you know all of the crap that Jude is about to get into, so enjoy it while you can, lovey girl. After dinner, Jude corners Taryn, and they have another little disagreement about Jude's self-destructive behavior, so not new as much there. Not much is new there. And the next day, classes, goes business as usual. Today's lesson is taught by the palace astronomer, Noggle, and he tells the class that the stars are a great way to get prophecies about the future. But it's a little bit tough for Jude to take notes since it's so dark out. She can't see as well of the Fae. And isn't that so interesting, because a few moments after she thinks about that, Prince Cardan speaks up and says, "Let's turn on the lights and do something different for our lesson today." Okay, that's interesting. While the class is getting reset up so that Prince Cardan can have a different lesson, Nicasia takes this lull as an opportunity to mess with Jude once again. Cardan doesn't really seem impressed with her evil behavior though, and so she's like a little bit embarrassed about it, and it just makes her want to be even more evil. And then things escalate very quickly, because all of a sudden Jude is trapped with Nicasia on one side, Valerian on the other, and Cardan is making his way over to them, so Jude is panicking, and Valerian takes this opportunity to shove an apple of fairy fruit into Jude's mouth, like very aggressively. Now, fairy food does not get along with human tummies, and almost immediately Jude can feel the poisonous effects of the fruit starting to take over her body. The immediate effect is kind of like downing an entire bottle of vodka in one sitting. Jude starts to freak out, and she is trying to get a hold of her salt, because salt is the only thing that will take away the poisonous effects. But she can't get any because Nicasia and Valerian are like holding her tight there, and Valerian just keeps shoving the fruit into her mouth like over and over to the point where she's almost suffocating and like starts to black out. Right before she passes out, Valerian gets ripped off of her, and it's Carden standing over her now, and he's looking a little unhinged himself. Now that the poison has kind of started to take over Jude's body, she's a little bit unaware of the danger of this situation. She's like, oh my god, I love you guys. Like a drunk girl in the bathroom, basically. Like, we're best friends. I would do anything for you. You're so pretty. And this is kind of a high school, so her classmates take this opportunity to try and ask her like the most embarrassing questions they can, but they don't really get anything fun out of her because she's like that far gone. Oh, and I forgot to mention, they force her to take her clothes off as well. She's like in her underwear while all of her classmates are asking her embarrassing questions. And it ends up being Carden who steps in and makes a demand of his own. He commands her to get down, crawl to him, and tell him how much she admires him. Before she can get into all that and like make a fool of herself, Locke steps in and he's like, okay guys, this is enough. I'm taking her home. But before they can walk away, Carden pulls out one of her hairpins actually and pokes her in the finger until she's bleeding. And she's like, ow, and sucks the blood into her finger. What'd you do that for? And then they head on their merry way. And the salt that Jude gets from the blood on her finger is enough to kind of dull the effects of the fairy fruit a little bit. Thank you, Carden. While Jude is walking back home with Locke, he asks her if he can see her again. Very romantic. And she's like, whoa, why? And Locke says, you're like a story that hasn't happened yet, because I want to see what you will do, and I want to be a part of the unfolding of the tale. Hold, please. I'd be thinking about that too, if somebody was like, you're a story, and Jude is not sure whether or not this is a good thing, but she's like, okay, like, he's pretty, okay. Jude gets home, and Maddox sees the post-fairy fruit poison state that she's in, and he goes into a rampage. This is War Daddy that we're talking about. But Jude is pretty sure that telling the High King's general that one of the princes has been bullying her would not end well for anybody. So she's like, instead of beating up my enemies for me, teach me to be stronger. I want to learn more strategy, more swordsmanship, everything. I want to know more. And he's like, oh my god, you really are my daughter. Yes. And Jude is like, okay, now I can go to bed. But when she gets to her room, there's an owl-faced hob waiting for her on her balcony because, oh my gosh, she has her first mission as a spy of Prince Dane. She is to go to Hollow Hall tomorrow and find a secret that the king would not like. Hollow Hall, we learn, is the home of Prince Baelkin and Prince Carden, which is why they're down here and they're up there, just to clarify. But these two boys living together, you know this will be interesting. So Jude gets up the next day, gets ready for her little mission. She puts on a disguise as a human servant because she knows that Baelkin has a lot of human servants in Hollowed Hall, so she'll fit right in. And she heads over on a giant toad, which is very fun. She also, on her way out the door, has a moment with Vivi, who heard about the whole fairy fruit incident and is like, do you need to talk? Like, that's traumatic. And Jude is like, what? No, it's nothing. I'm fine. I'm totally fine. So when Jude gets to Hollow Hall, it's pretty much what you would expect. It's very like Halloween, giant, gray, dark, menacing castle, you know? And since Baelkin is the leader of the like drug, sex, and rock and roll circle, it kind of just always looks like the aftermath of like a gross party in there. And Jude is pretty confident that she can kind of sneak in and sneak out, especially dressed up as a human servant, since he already has those. And honestly, she's kind of right. She makes it in pretty easily and finds the other human servants that she can kind of play along with. And it's a really creepy sight for both readers and Jude herself to see all of these humans that have been enchanted by fairies to be their servants. So they kind of have like glassed over eyes. They're pretty gaunt because they don't eat a lot, and they move pretty robotically because they're just forcefully following commands. It's not a pretty sight, but Jude knows that she can't really do anything to help them right now, so she hurries along and she ends up finding herself in a bedroom. And when she sees that the textbooks on the bedroom desk are the same as the textbooks that she has, she realizes that she has found her way into Prince Carden's bedroom. The scandal. She doesn't really stay there very long, though. She ends up stealing a copy of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass because it reminds her of her childhood. But then she skedaddles out of there and she makes her way to Baelken's office / study. And on the desk in Baelken's study, Jude finds a letter. Let me read this letter to you. I know the provenance of the blusher mushroom that you ask after, but what you do with it must not be tied to me. After this, I consider my debt paid. Let my name be stricken from your lips. This, my friends, is a special moment because this is the first clue that we get in our puzzle. That's supposed to be a blusher mushroom. Remember this letter. You won't have to try very hard. They talk about it a lot. So blusher mushrooms, Jude knows and tells us, are poisonous. And this letter, clearly, seems very important to her. So she grabs another piece of paper and tries to trace over it so that she can bring a copy of it back to Dane. And she has to hurry because all of a sudden she's hearing someone coming up the steps. And it's Prince Baelken himself who ends up opening the door and walking in. And Jude just barely manages to hide herself under a desk and out of sight. And who's that behind Baelken? Our favorite little snake, Prince Carden. And we see a very interesting interaction between these two brothers here. All we really know about them is that Baelken is the oldest brother and likes to party, and that Carden is like kind of a bully who lives with his older brother. So you would think that they might get along, but what we see here is very different. So Baelken demands that Carden has a little duel with him right then and there in the office to show him what he's learned. Carden clearly does not want to, but Baelken clearly does not care. He forces Carden to fight anyway, and it's pretty evident that Carden is not really the best with a sword. So he loses the sparring match pretty quickly, and as punishment, Baelken has Carden stay on the ground and brings over one of his human servants to beat Carden. Yeah, it's pretty brutal, honestly. Even Jude feels kind of gross for seeing this moment that she's not really supposed to be seeing. And she also gets a little bit uncomfortable because she thought that if she ever saw Carden in a weak, hurt position like this, she would feel good about it. But it kind of just makes Carden seem more real to her. She thinks, I know what it is to say the clever thing because you don't want anyone to know how scared you are. So for the first time, Jude is kind of seeing a little bit of herself in Carden. Yeah, okay. Good to know. As a last attempt to get out of the punishment, Carden grabs a nearby sword and threatens to kill the servant that's beating him, but then he stops and he says, I am no murderer, which is another shocker for Jude because he's been displaying very murderous tendencies recently in his bullying towards her. So now she has no idea what to make of him. Baelken and Carden leave the office, so Jude scurries on over to the Palace of Elfame so that she can give this letter that she found to Prince Dane as quickly as possible. And she kind of has this realization that she liked spying and she liked being good at it. Our little Jude is a bit of an adrenaline junkie. Dane is pretty happy with the letter that Jude shows him, and so he introduces her to one of my personal favorite characters, the Roach. Let me just literally read you the description of his character. A male goblin, scarred, his skin the green of pawns, his nose is long and twists fully around before bending back toward his face like a scythe. His hair is a black tuft on the very crown of his head. His eyes are unreadable, and his voice is melodious, completely at odds with his face. So yeah, he is sick as hell, and he is a part of Dane's Court of Shadows. The Court of Shadows are basically just a group of Dane's spies, and the Roach is here to officially bring Jude into their lair now that she's proved herself. Jude also figures out right away that the Roach is not his real name, and so she's like, oh, should I be using a code name as well? And he tells her that the spies will give her her code name when it's ready. So that's something to look forward to. Prince Dane shows the Roach the letter about the provenance of blusher mushrooms, and the two of them seem to think that Baelkin is looking to poison Dane with blusher mushrooms so that Baelkin can get the crown from Eldred instead of Dane. So things are getting both political and familial. Dane takes a second to use the power that he still has over Jude as the maker of that geese that he gave her earlier, and he basically just commands her to never tell anyone that she's a spy, never tell anyone where the spy layer is, never reveal their secrets, etc., etc. Pretty standard, like when you're working for the government, you gotta sign an NDA, you know what I mean? But Jude still doesn't really love the idea of anyone giving her a command that controls her body. She kind of just tells herself it's okay, this is for the best, and I know what I signed up for. Side note, Prince Dane also tells Jude to look into mithridatism, but more on that later. So the Roach is like, all right, kid, come with me, and he takes her to the lair of the Court of Shadows, where we get to meet the other spies. There are only two. There's the Ghost. He's like this part fairy boy, and he's a little sly. He gives Jude a nice little wink, and he's not hard on the eyes. That's kind of his vibe. And then we have the Bomb, who I love, and like her name suggests, she likes to blow things up. They kind of give Jude a little bit of a breakdown on what it's like to be a spy in the Court of Shadows, and it's kind of what you would expect: spying, sneaking, deceiving, that good stuff. And they each have a specialty, but Jude's specialty is going to be lying, since she's a human and she has that ability. And she can also hide among the human servants, as we saw when she entered into Hollow Hall. But Jude is only 17. She doesn't really have the experience in spying that the others do, so they're going to have to train her in their ways. And they basically decide that when Jude is supposed to be sleeping, she can take some time to sneak out and get a little training in. You get the vibe here that they don't totally trust Jude yet, since she's the newbie, but that the three of them are pretty close together. They settle in, they pull out some drinks, and have a nice rapport with each other before they send Jude home. And when Jude gets home, everybody's hanging out outside, and her foxy little friend Locke seems to be paying her a visit. He sidles up to Jude's side with some sweet words and begs that she returns to class the next day, because he thinks that she skipped class because of the whole fairy fruit incident, when really she was being a spy for Prince Dane. And Jude eats it up. They end up slipping out into a stable where Jude has her very first kiss with foxy boy Locke. And Jude is very into it. She feels very special. But then what's that? Oh no, a voice? Jude! It's Sister Taryn coming around the corner. So Jude and Locke slide out of the stables, and they meet up with Taryn, who seems a little bit uncomfortable to have been walking in on something, and she's like, dinner's ready. If you want to join, Locke, you can always stay. And he's like, thank you, but no thank you, and gets on out of there. After dinner that night, Maddox gives Jude this giant stack of war books, and he's like, here you go, get to training. And then Taryn comes in to interrogate her about this new Locke situation that she just saw going on, and also about the fairy fruit incident that she heard about the other day. But Jude isn't really in much of a sharing mood right now, and she doesn't really have a lot to say. She's not afraid to fight back anymore. She likes being a spy, and Locke is fun. So she turns the conversation back onto Taryn, and she's like, what about that secret fairy lover boy that I know you have? And Taryn confirms there is in fact a fairy boy, and he is going to propose on Coronation Day. But she does not reveal who it is, and she says that she cannot because she promised that she would not. Jude has a little bit of a moment of panic because she's like, oh my god, is Taryn talking about Carden? But Taryn tells her that Jude would like him, and so she's like, okay, then it's not Cardan. And they have this nice little moment, so Jude decides to show her the copy of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass that she stole from Cardan's bedroom, and when she grabs the book to give it to Taryn, a little piece of paper slips out, so she hides it under her pillow, and then she's like, Taryn, look, this book from our childhood, and Taryn is like, oh my god, and starts reading her the stories, which lulls Jude into a nice little sleep. When she wakes up in the middle of the night, of course, to go piss girl, she remembers the piece of paper that she hid under her pillow and goes to pull it out and see what she could find. She unfolds this piece of paper and reveals what I would call a masterpiece of passion. All over the paper, in every space that he could manage to fit it, Cardan has furiously written Jude's name over and over and over again. This reveal, this turn of the page, changed lives. Any Jude Cardan deniers out there were instantly silenced. And in this iconic moment, I would like to take a second to honor Mike's Mike with an Olivia Wilde head nod. But we immediately move on to the next day, when a dressmaker comes to Maddox's household so that they can all get their measurements taken and have dresses made, especially for the coronation that's coming up. Jude has kind of a hard time focusing. She's a little bit caught up on the thought of that piece of paper with her name written all over it. And you know that Jude is the same kind of messy as Cardan, because while she's thinking about how much he must hate her, Oriana comes over and is like, oh my god, who are you thinking about? You look so dreamy, like, you have a crush on someone. Anyway, Jude is first up to get measured by the seamstress, and she tells her slyly that her dress is to be made with extra pockets for weapons and poisons, and she's like, oh yeah, I'm a spy. And it kind of centers her. It reminds her that what she needs to be focusing on right now is becoming the best spy that she can and proving that she's stronger than all of the Fae who have doubted her. Vivi also notices a weird look on Jude's face and tries to talk to her again about what happened with the fairy fruit, because she's like, that was a really seriously traumatic thing that happened to you and you should talk about it. But as a reader, it already feels like so much has happened since then that it just goes to show how quickly Jude has gotten into this mess that is her life. But Jude doesn't want to talk about serious things. No, she wants to use good old reliable and just shove everything down until it explodes. And frankly, she's pretty good at it. While the family is looking through all of the fabrics that they can choose from for their outfits, Jude finds this one that she is just blown away by. It's almost like very fantasy core within a fantasy core novel. Like, it has butterflies and plants all embroidered on it, and she's like, this is the one. This is the one. But before she can say anything out loud, Taryn sees what she's looking at and says, I want that one. And this moment is where the Taryn haters really begin to rise, I feel. And it's also where I think a lot of fans and I diverge. I'm sorry. Like, I understand that this is a bratty thing to do, and that if your sister is like clearly looking at this beautiful fabric, maybe see if she wants it before like jumping in and trying to get it for yourself. And I'm not claiming that Taryn is perfect, okay? I'm just saying that Jude isn't perfect either, okay? She has kind of made Taryn's life pretty difficult recently for mostly selfish reasons, I would say. I think she's right. I think Jude is in the right for sure. I'm just saying that I understand and love them both. Okay. Now that that's settled, we can move on. Taryn does, in fact, get that dress fabric, and Jude just kind of picks a random other one, and she's like, okay, whatever. But then we have another very tense family moment between Jude, Oak, and Oriana, when Jude kind of is messing around with Oak, playing with him as a big sister does, and Oriana yanks him away, and since Jude is already at the end of her fuse, she kind of just bursts out and says, I'm not a monster, is she? She also makes a very snide remark about Maddox not being her real dad, and Taryn is like, and Vivi's like, hell yeah, fight the man. The next day, the twins go back to class, and Jude is balancing a lot on her plate at the moment. Locke is throwing winks in her direction, Taryn is nitpicking everything she does, and Cardan is still in a sour mood from being beaten at the tournament the other day. So everyone is not doing great right now, except for Locke, I guess. After school the next day, Jude trains with Maddox a little bit, and then she goes into her room to get into a whole new world of trouble. Do you remember, perchance, that word that Prince Dane brought up kind of offhandedly? It was mithridatism. Let's get into it. Mithridatism is defined by Merriam-Webster as tolerance to a poison acquired by taking gradually increased doses of it. Darling Jude lays out a slice of fairy fruit, poisonous, a leaf of wraithberry, poisonous, a petal from the flower death sweet, poisonous, and a tiny bit of juice from our favorite poison, the blusher mushroom. Then she eats a little bit of each and gets too sick to go to dinner that night. It makes me sad, honestly. She's so determined to be a badass, but the lengths that she will go to are horrifying. She falls into this exhausted, poison-induced sleep, and it ends up being the ghost who wakes her up for a little bit of spy training. The ghost's specialty is sly footing. He's very sneaky, like a ghost. So they practice a little bit, and he tells her to just keep on practicing in her real life so that she can get really good at it. And then the book kind of just walks us through Jude's routine and how burnt out she gets. Jude falls into a bit of a routine of classes, training with Maddox, poisoning herself, training with the spies, and plus she's swapping spit with Locke every time she gets a chance. But one thing we do learn as this time passes is that Cardan's little friend group has had some drama. Apparently, Nicasia and Cardan were an item until Locke stole Nicasia from him, only to drop Nicasia for Jude. So now Nicasia is butthurt at being left for a mortal, and Cardan is butthurt that his girlfriend got stolen only to get dumped. And Locke? He's just having a good time. Okay, my friends, at this point we are just about halfway through our journey together, and it's getting dark out, so I'm gonna go eat some dinner, and you will see me in a new outfit very soon. Hello again. Before we get back into things, let's do a little bit of a mini recap to see where we are now. Baelkin is potentially trying to poison Dane with blusher mushrooms so that Baelkin can become the High King instead. Vivi has a secret girlfriend, Heather. Taryn has a secret fairy boyfriend that we do not know the identity of, and Taryn and Jude are constantly at each other's throats because of Jude's tendency to get everyone into a bit of trouble. Valerian, bully. Nicasia, bully. Locke, sexy bully? Cardan is a butthurt bully because Jude just absolutely crushed him at the summer tournament, where unfortunately she was not able to become a knight because Daddy Maddox wants her to wait until after the big coronation to make any moves. But Jude kind of pulled a 180 on everyone and managed to become a secret spy for Prince Dane and his court of shadows. And also, just for funsies, she started to poison herself. And I believe that that catches us up. So now we are ready to jump forward to a few days before the big coronation. At this point, Jude is really pushing it with all of the extracurriculars, and now she's sick from the poison, constantly. And so one day she slips up a little bit and she falls asleep during class. She jolts awake, she's on the floor, and she's alone in the classroom with Valerian, and he is now holding her necklace of rowan berries of protection. This is not good. Valerian is done playing games. He gives Jude a smirk, uses his fairy enchantment magic, and tells her to go to the edge of the tower that they're in and to shout out to Cardan that he has won, and then jump to her death. Because he says that being born mortal is like being born already dead. Jude is a little on edge, naturally. She wasn't really aware of how far Valerian was willing to go, and she knows that in another life, she would have jumped from that tower to her death. But in this one, she's made a little deal with a certain Prince Dane, and that deal protects her from all fairy magic. So instead, she tells Valerian, "I think I'll take the stairs," and walks away. That doesn't totally get her out of the situation, of course, though, because now Valerian is like, what? Because as someone that's kind of already on the edge of sanity, having a lowly, mortal girl like Jude beat him at his own game really pushes him over the edge. He says, "You are nothing. You barely exist at all. Your only purpose is to create more of your kind before you die some pointless and agonizing death." Okay. Jude, at this point, is over it. She's like, okay, and? So what? Which just pisses him off even more. And when he gets violent, Jude's only option for self-defense is to pull out her own dagger and stab Valerian in the side, which is something that she's never really done to somebody before. And immediately, Maddox's words from earlier come back to her once again. You're no killer. But she just might be. But not today. Unfortunately, Valerian will be fine. So Jude runs out of the tower and she bumps right into Cardan, and she's kind of convinced that all of their bullying towards Jude is his fault and his doing. So she's like, "What do you want? I'll stab you too." And he's like, "What are you talking about?" Just then, our pretty boy Locke starts to make his way over to get Jude out of this situation, and Jude sees a little look on Cardan's face, and she says, "You don't think I deserve him?" And ding, 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 we have another line for our brain jar, because Cardan looks at her, he laughs a little bit and says, "Oh, no, I think you're perfect for each other." Whatever could that mean? Well, we won't find out for a little while, but Locke takes her out of there, and we do learn a little bit more about the evil besties friend group dynamic. Locke tells Jude that everyone kind of thinks that Cardan is like their evil leader, but really he's more like a conduit for each of their deepest desires. Since he's the prince, he can kind of offer them the world. And he says that Valerian craves violence, Nicasia craves power, and Locke craves dramatics. And he also tells her that if he can't find a good enough story, he makes one. Jude's mind is having a busy day. But regardless, Locke takes Jude back to his place for the first time, and it's a very beautiful, fancy, fairy tale estate. And we find out that our little fox friend lives here all by himself because his dad left when he was a kid to go run free in the wild, and his mom has died. And Jude is like, "Damn, your mom is dead?" And he's like, "Yeah, she kind of ended up getting involved with the High King, and 1 + 1 = a baby. And someone didn't want there to be another heir out there eligible for the throne, and so they had Locke's mother and her unborn baby murdered with blusher mushroom." Does that sound familiar to anyone? But how could it all be connected? Only time will tell. Locke doesn't love that things got dark all of a sudden about his traumatic childhood, and so he takes Jude up to the tallest tower in his estate to ask her to come to this party that he's having there tonight and convince her to come by making out with her. It kind of works on Jude. Honestly, they end up getting a little hot and heavy and taking things back down to the dining room, and Jude is like, "You know what? Screw it. I'll come to the party. Why not?" But Jude doesn't have anything to wear. And so Locke is like, "I have a genius idea. You can borrow one of my dead mom's dresses." And he takes her into her bedroom, her old dusty ass bedroom, to see if she can find a dress that she would like to wear to the party. And the dresses, quite frankly, are beautiful. And so suddenly Jude is wearing one of Locke's dead mom's dresses, which is crazy, before she goes to a party with the people that potentially hate her most in the world, and she doesn't even really know what she's doing with Locke in the first place. But we all know by now that our girl Jude is not the most logical, and so she follows Locke into his backyard for the party. Walking into a cool kid party, I feel, is like a shared experience of stress and trauma, and it seems like it's even more stressful when one of the potential party goers tried to kill you a few hours ago. So Jude reaches into the pocket of Locke's dead mother's dress that she's borrowing to kind of reach for her like emotional support dagger. And while her hand is digging around in there, she finds a little golden acorn, which is another tidbit to file away for just a moment. So in Locke's backyard, there's like this giant hedge maze, and that's kind of like where all the cool kids gather to party. And when they get to the middle of the maze, there's a bunch of people there, there's music, there's laughing, there's dancing, there's Carden sprawled out on a blanket with fairy girls kissing him while he stares at Jude, so pretty much all of your normal party expectations are being met here. No Valerian though, which is a big bonus. And that's really all we get from the party. The next thing she knows, Jude is waking up the next morning and she's in Locke's bed. But don't worry, nothing really happened, they just slept. And Jude is ready to get out of there, so she changes back into her normal clothes, but almost as an afterthought, she grabs that golden acorn from Locke's dead mom's dress pocket, and she keeps it with her. On her way out, she runs into our favorite mean girl, Nicasia, and she tells us that apparently her and Carden's relationship was serious enough that both of their parents thought that they were going to get married, which would have been a very interesting connection between the sea and the land. And she says he ruins things. That's what he likes, to ruin things. Jude goes to class again, and we learn a little bit more about the very special blood crown. Apparently, the crown has been cursed, so if anyone tries to kill the person that wears the crown, the killer will also themselves die. And we learn that there have to be 2 Greenbrier descendants for the crown to be on someone's head, 1 person to wear the crown and 1 person to put the crown on their head. So only a Greenbrier can wear the crown, and only a Greenbrier can put the crown onto someone, which is a very nitpicky detail, but it is important. After class, Taryn and Jude have another tense conversation about their love lives, where Taryn thinks that this whole thing between Jude and Locke is like a little bit strange, but Jude is like, you won't even tell me who you're dating. And so once again, nothing is really resolved between them. And then later that night, something a little bit strange happens. Jude is lying in bed, fiddling around with that acorn that she found in Locke's dead mom's dress, and all of a sudden it pops open and a little golden bird comes out and recites a message to her. It's kind of like a little fairy voicemail, and it says, "My dearest friend, these are the last words of Liriope. I have 3 golden birds to scatter, 3 attempts to get one into your hand. I am too far gone for any antidote, and so if you hear this, I leave you with the burden of my secrets and the last wish of my heart. Protect him. Take him far from the dangers of this court. Keep him safe and never, ever tell him the truth of what happened to me." And now, not only do we have another piece to this puzzle, but we know who this puzzle is about. Liriope. Okay, wow. So, what we know now is that Locke's mom, Liriope, was a consort to the High King Eldred, and she ended up getting pregnant, and someone didn't want her to have that baby, and so they poisoned her with blusher mushroom, and she knew that she was being poisoned and that she wasn't going to make it, so she sent out these little acorn messages with the hopes that someone would be able to protect her son from the court. Jude thinks back to the letter that she found on Baelken's desk, and she's like, okay, something is wrong here. Queen Orla, who wrote the letter, wasn't saying that she found blusher mushroom and could give them to Baelken so that he can poison Dane. She was saying that she found the specific place where the blusher mushrooms that were used to kill Liriope were grown. And that means that Prince Dane and the Roach's theory that Baelken is trying to poison Dane with blusher mushroom before the coronation is not correct. Baelken is trying to find out who killed Liriope. And now we are as well. More information, more questions. And if you're like, oh my god, my head hurts, where's Carden? Don't worry, Jude is also confused and she feels like she's just missing some key pieces to this puzzle, so she decides to go back to Hollow Hall to see if she missed anything while she was there. Spoiler alert, she doesn't find anything. All that she sees on Baelken's desk are some letters actually from Maddox about how the guards are going to be arranged around the royal dais during the coronation and such. But unfortunately, that is not the end of Jude's second trip to Hollow Hall. Please prepare yourself for another haunting and gruesome Holly Black scene. Walking through Baelkin's manor as a human is pretty haunting. Like, as we saw last time, all of the human servants that are there are very gaunt, very robotic, very lifeless, and seeing them again is just too much for Jude. But she knows that she doesn't have the power at the moment to be able to save all of the servants, so she decides that maybe she can just save one. She ends up in Baelkin's library with a human servant girl named Sophie, and she makes the rash decision to force feed Sophie some salt so that she'll snap out of her fairy enchantment. Sophie snaps out of it, and Jude is like, "Don't worry, ma'am, I am here to help." But she didn't really think about the fact that Sophie might not know where she is, or that fairies exist, or how long Sophie has been enchanted for. So this poor girl is basically looking around her for the first time, and she's like, why am I wearing old-timey servant clothes? Why are there inhuman creatures everywhere? Who are you? Where are we? And Jude, as well-intentioned as she is in this moment, she's not the most patient person. And she's like, oh my God, get it together. We need to sneak you out of here and back to the human world now. And Sophie's like, back to the human world? What world is this? As you can imagine, it doesn't go super awesome, but they do get out of Hollow Hall. Jude's master plan here is to find Vivian and have her conjure up some magical horses so that they can fly back to the mortal world. So she takes Sophie back to Maddox's house. She finds Vivi and she explains the situation to her. And Vivi's like, oh, okay, yeah, cool. I can totally help you. I thought you were going to tell me that you had murdered someone. She also hits Jude with an absolute pill. She says, you can't save your mother, you know, she's already dead. Yikes! Yikes. Jude is still in denial that she has any feelings at all, and so she just sweeps that one under the rug with the rest of her trauma. They start to make their way through the woods and toward a cliffside where they can fly over the ocean to the mortal world, because that's how you get back. And on the way, Sophie keeps picking up rocks and putting them in her pockets, but this entire time she's kind of been on the brink of sanity, so Jude doesn't really think that much of it. They get on their ragwort horses and start to fly over the ocean, and Jude thinks that even though this was maybe a really stupid idea, and even though I can't save all of the humans in Fairy yet, maybe we can save this one girl, Sophie. But then Sophie closes her eyes, and she leans to the side until she slips off of her horse and into the ocean below. It is a very difficult moment to read, and even Jude and Vivi are both completely shocked. They also both try and dive into the ocean like over and over again for hours trying to find her, but they don't. And it's also a moment that really sticks with Jude. I kind of debated whether or not I wanted to include it because it isn't technically relevant to the rest of the plot, but it's a moment where Holly Black is once again screaming at us to remember the stakes here. Remember that this is not the human world, and these are not human games, and there are lives at stake. And this is definitely something that Jude will be thinking about for a very long time. The next day, Jude wakes up exhausted and is immediately told that Prince Dane is waiting for her downstairs, and she's like, oh my God, will I ever have a second to breathe? No, you won't. I'm so sorry. Prince Dane is pissed, and Jude is like, oh my God, he knows that I stole Sophie from Baelkin's house. I am going to be executed. But thankfully, Dane does not know about Sophie. He is mad about the little tussle that Jude got into with Valerian the other day, the one where she stabbed him in the side. Yeah. Apparently, it's not super awesome for Prince Dane if his spies go around stabbing the rich kids, and also making it known that enchantments don't work on them. He tells her, you are my creature, Jude Duart, which gives us a very good idea of how Dane sees her. As punishment, Prince Dane wants Jude to prove her dedication and loyalty to him by stabbing a dagger through her own hand. So what does she do? She stabs herself. Duh. She's crazy. It is kind of a wild move though, like even Dane, who told her to do it, is kind of like, whoa, okay, just stay under the radar for a little while here. He says, show your power by appearing powerless. Let's all think on that for a little while. We also get another classic badass Jude line here. While she's making these promises to Dane, she also makes one to herself. She says, instead of being afraid, I could become something to fear. Go get him, girl. And to make matters worse, the door to the study that they're meeting in swings open. And who's there? It's stepmomster Oriana, and seeing Jude privately meeting with Prince Dane immediately makes her think that Jude and Dane are absolutely getting it on. But Oriana doesn't really know how to reconcile that information, and so she does the unthinkable. She gives Jude a hug. Ugh. She needs it. Jude's not doing great at this point. She's tired. She's traumatized. She's bleeding out of her hand now. And the coronation is tomorrow. So the culmination of all of her spying so far and the day that she gets to find out if she has a place in the royal court as the new High King's spy is coming up fast. And everyone's going to be there, and Jude is going to be expected to party it up like everything's normal, even though she has one singular brain cell left, and it is begging her to take a nap. But at least our foxy little Locke is going to be there to dance with. Maddox's household is in for a little treat because all of the outfits and dresses that they bought for the coronation have finally arrived. And Jude gets a little surprised because the fabric that she picked last minute after Taryn took the one that she wanted is not the fabric of the dress that shows up. Instead, Jude gets this ethereal, beautiful gown that takes her breath away. It's ombre from white to deep indigo, and it has the outline of trees stitched all over it and crystals as stars. And I only mention it because it isn't exactly a random gift. The twins get a classic talking to from stepmomster Oriana about how wild the party is gonna be and how they need to be extra careful. And then Jude gets her own individual little talking to because Oriana thinks again that she's sleeping with Prince Dane, and she says, Jude, it is no easy thing to be the lover of the High King. It is to always be in danger. It is to always be a pawn. And even though Jude is not sleeping with Dane, that will be sticking with her. Oriana goes on to reveal that before she was a stepmomster, she was also a consort to the High King, which is why she knows how dangerous it can be and why she doesn't think Jude should be getting involved in that lifestyle. She tells Jude about one of her friends who was also a consort to the High King and ended up getting pregnant and then killed because of it. Does that sound familiar to anyone? Does it maybe remind you of a certain note about blusher mushrooms? Or maybe a golden acorn? Yeah, Jude is pretty sure that she's talking about Liriope, who seems to be at the center of this strange mystery that's unraveling. We also get an offhand comment from Taryn in this chapter, who says that Baelkin was over at their house to meet with Maddox, but we don't know why. Interesting. Then Jude goes to bed thinking that the day before the coronation, maybe she'll finally get a couple hours of shut-eye in. She is unfortunately wrong because all of a sudden, someone is jumping into her bedroom through her balcony, and it looks like our old friend Valerian has licked his wounds and come back ready for more. This scene marks a huge moment in Jude's life because Valerian is attacking her with the intent to kill. He will not be bested by a mortal girl. And so Jude's only way to get out of this alive is to become what her father thought she could never be, a killer. She drives her knife into his chest, making sure to hit his heart, and he leaves her with a curse. I curse you. 3 times I curse you. As you've murdered me, may your hands always be stained with blood. May death be your only companion. May you, and that's the last thing we hear from this little shithead. Oh, and we will definitely be filing this little curse away into Jude's brain jar. Poor Jude. This is like an all-time low for her, and it's only a few days after the death of Sophie. It's just too much for her to handle, but she knows that if Dane found out, he would be absolutely livid. So she wraps Valerian's dead body up into a petticoat and rolls him under her bed. The ghost shows up a little while later for a spy training session. They head to the Palace of Elfame, and hiding in the shadows as one of Dane's spies, Jude makes her second kill. It's not quite as dramatic this time. They were just told to kill one of Baelkin's messengers as they're going into the palace, and so they shoot him with a crossbow, nice and easy, and the ghost is like, damn, you're kind of good at this. And Jude is like, you know what? I am kind of good at this. But is that something that I should be proud of? Like, is it a good thing to be a monster? Her existential crisis is cut a little bit short, however, when they go down to the messenger's dead body and they see a note that she was carrying and realize that they've been played. This was not one of Baelkin's messengers. This was one of Maddox's, and she's carrying a note that says, "Kill the bearer of this message." Bum bum bum. Suddenly there's this feeling that someone's playing a game that Jude isn't even aware of, and it has something to do with the coronation and something to do with Liriope and her murder. When Jude gets home that night, she buries Valerian's body in her backyard. And then, at last, it's time for the coronation. All three sisters are getting ready in a flurry, yes, including Vivian. Everybody is excited to go, especially to see who Taryn's future husband is going to be. That and the chance to make out with Locke are pretty much the only things keeping Jude going at the moment. Before the family heads out to the palace, Maddox pulls Jude aside to give her a special little gift. So Jude's biological father, Justin, was a really skilled blacksmith, and Maddox gives Jude a special sword that her father made himself, and it's called Nightfell. It's a very sweet moment for Jude because she doesn't really know a lot about her biological parents, and Maddox kind of takes the time to sit down and talk about them with her, which is a little bit strange considering he's the one that killed them, but it's still a really nice moment. But back to the coronation. So, when the family arrives, Maddox makes his way over to his number one guy, Prince Dane, and the rest of the family is good to just kind of get on in there and start partying it up until it's time for High King Eldred to announce the new king. It kind of seems like every important person in Fairyland has shown up for the occasion, but the most horrifying person in attendance is Sophie. Yes, dead human servant Sophie. Things really just got worse for her because after she fell into the ocean, people from the undersea swam up and found her and then turned her into their own servant. So her pain and suffering literally just continues. Jude also runs into the Roach, who tells her to kind of keep an eye out for things, but he seems generally to be in a good mood. And Jude is kind of like, I think I really like the spy crew. Is this friendship? She, of course, also runs into foxy little Locke on the dance floor, but things start to go sour when he asks her some very strange questions, like, could you love me? What would you do for me? Do you love me enough to give me up? Isn't that a test of love? Honestly, some haunting questions. He also throws out, if I hurt you, would you cry for me? And she's like, whoa. Okay, if you hurt me, I wouldn't cry for you. I would hurt you back. And Locke is like, whoa, what? But just then, another cruel boy steps in for a dance with Jude, Prince Carden, saying, time to change partners. Oh, did I steal your line? Then Jude and Carden share a dance and a moment of mutual hatred. But it seems like they both have pretty big smiles on their face. How odd. A bell chimes, signaling the start of the crowning ceremony, and all of the royal family gathers together on the dais, except for Prince Carden, who seems to be missing all of the sudden. So Jude goes to find her own family, and she sees Taryn giggling with her mystery fairy boy, but she stops in her tracks when she realizes that the person Taryn has been talking about this entire time, the person that Taryn has fallen in love with and plans on marrying, is Foxy Boy Locke. Who guessed it? Not me. I didn't. The Locke, Jude's boyfriend, Locke, has been planning on getting married to her twin sister, Taryn. That's right. That's right. Jude is stunned. I mean, this is weird for a few reasons, right? Because that means Locke was two-timing the twins, but it also means that Taryn knew the entire time that Jude had a relationship with Locke, that Locke was planning on proposing to Taryn. And yeah, I am still a fan of Taryn. Sorry. Anyway, Jude has no interest in going to stand with her family now, so she stays where she is to watch the crowning ceremony on her own. High King Eldred's seneschal starts the ceremony, and the big question is finally asked. Who is Eldred picking to be the next High King? And to no one's surprise, he picks Prince Dane. So Dane gets up to do a bunch of crowning ceremony stuff, like taking his clothes off and then getting all painted on and then putting his clothes back on and all of that. And Jude is almost swelling with pride in this moment, which really surprises her, but she looks over at the Roach and he seems to be feeling the same way. And it is kind of this huge moment because she's about to become the new High King's spy. Or is she? At that moment, Jude realizes that all of the guards surrounding the royal dais are not royal guards. They're Daddy Maddox guards. And a few things click into place for her. 1. The rest of Jude's family has been taken out of the throne room. 2. Maddox said that he had plans to ensure their future. 3. Maddox was having mysterious meetings with one of the princes, and it wasn't Prince Dane. And 4. It was Maddox's messenger that Jude had killed the day before. Just then, as the crown is about to be placed onto Prince Dane's head, Baelkin makes his move. He gets up very dramatically to announce that he does not accept his brother as the new High King of Elfame, and he challenges Dane to a duel for the Blood Crown. Dane, of course, just laughs because he doesn't need to duel for the Blood Crown. Their father is freely giving it to him. And at Dane's refusal, Baelkin strikes out and murders their older sister, Elwyn, right then and there. Dane calls out for the guards, but they don't move because they aren't the royal guards. They all belong to Maddox, Dane's supposed number one guy. And when the guards don't move, confusion spreads and chaos breaks out. Arrows fly out of nowhere and strike Baelkin in the side. Maddox rushes onto the stage and plunges his sword into Prince Dane, betraying his High King. Baelkin demands that the High King put the crown onto his head now, but when Eldred refuses, Baelkin murders him too. They are all dying. Only Princess Raya, Princess Celia, and Prince Carden are left to crown Baelkin, and Prince Carden is nowhere to be found. Princess Celia steps forward and says that she'll crown Baelkin if it will just end this horror show. But before she can, another arrow flies out and hits her in the chest. The last princess, Raya, steps forward, and before Baelkin can even ask her to crown him, she pulls out a knife and she cuts her own throat. At this point, even Jude is crying out for this to end. There are only 2 Greenbriars left, Baelkin and Carden, who's still missing, and no one is wearing the crown. Alone on the dais, surrounded by blood, Baelkin shouts for everyone to swear themselves to him, but no one does. They will wait until the crown is on someone's head before they swear any oaths. And believe it or not, after that, everyone kind of just goes back to partying. And then there's Jude, already at her wits' end. Sprites glitter in the air that stinks of freshly spilled blood. The revel will go on, I realize. Everything will go on. But I am not sure that I can. And that is the end of part 1. Which means we have a poem to read as we enter into part 2. Empty your heart of its mortal dream. The winds awaken, the leaves whirl round. Our cheeks are pale, our hair is unbound. Our breasts are heaving, our eyes are agleam. Our arms are waving, our lips are apart. And if any gaze on our rushing band, we come between him and the deed of his hand. We come between him and the hope of his heart. William Butler Yeats, the hosting of the She. We begin part 2 in the immediate aftermath of the coronation bloodbath. Jude is hiding under a table, which feels appropriate. The biggest shock for her in all of this is really Maddox's role in the whole thing, because Maddox was known as being Dane's number one guy. And even though Jude knows that Maddox is literally a war general, she's never seen this kind of betrayal or bloodshed up close before. And she's really glad that the rest of her family was taken out of the throne room and that they didn't have to see it. She starts to make a plan to get out of the throne room and all of the chaos so that she can then make a better plan about what to do now that she's kind of no longer a spy. But before she goes anywhere, someone lifts up the tablecloth that she's hiding under, and none other than Prince Carden Greenbrier, the most wanted man in Elfame, and Jude's arch nemesis, is standing in front of her. And he is drunk off his ass. So Jude punches him in the stomach, pulls him under the table, and starts to try and come up with a new plan, while Carden thinks about the fact that pretty much his entire family is dead right now, and he tells Jude that apparently his father hated him, and he didn't really know any of his other siblings. Yeesh. The two of them need to get out of the throne room so that Carden won't just immediately be grabbed. And so to get past the guards, Jude's brilliant idea of a disguise is to let her hair down and shake it out a little bit. And Carden is like, oh my God. To Jude's credit, she does end up going to steal someone's mask, so her face is covered and she does look different, but it doesn't really matter because the guards don't let them past anyway until Carden pulls out a few clever words and he tricks them by telling them a bunch of half-truths about how Baelkin is waiting for them in the palace, and he shows them this special royal signet ring that he has that only the Greenbrier heirs possess. When it works and they get past the guards, Jude is like begrudgingly impressed, but Carden is so smug about it that she literally just wants to beat him up. Ugh, they're working together, guys. Yes! Their little moment doesn't last very long, though, because as soon as they're in a private hallway, Jude shoves Carden against a wall, pulls out a dagger, presses it to his throat, and says, "Surprised?" And man, does she love having him in this very vulnerable position. Carden doesn't really think that she has the gall to hurt him, so she's like, "Oh, when's the last time you saw your good friend Valerian? It's been a while, right? That's because I murdered him and buried him in my backyard." And Carden is like, "Oh, I might actually be in danger right now." And Jude is like, "Yeah, you're gonna have to come with me." And she shoves him down the hall, and she thinks to herself, "I keep my expression as mask-like as I know how, as cruel and cold as the face that reoccurs in my nightmares. It is only as I do it that I realize who I am aping, whose face frightened me into wanting it for my own. His." And we are just getting started, my friends. Part 2 is unhinged. Jude takes Carden to the Court of Shadows lair, where she ties him up to a chair and shoves him into Dane's old office, while she tries to kind of come up with a new plan now that Dane is dead and she doesn't really have a boss anymore. But she reminds herself of the promise that she made to herself when she was stabbing her own hand through. "Instead of being afraid, I will become something to fear." So who cares if Dane is dead? Her goal has always been to secure power for herself. And so that's what she's going to do. Looking around at this secret lair, Carden realizes that Jude is a spy, and she just becomes even more terrifying to him. And so Jude starts to question him, but he kind of doesn't know anything. So Jude walks over to him and pulls off that royal signet ring of his, and uses it to seal a letter that she plans on sending out. Just then, the ghost and the roach make their way into the lair, and they are not happy. They kind of think that Jude might be working with Maddox and she's his daughter, but she's like, "Guys, if I were working with Maddox, I would have brought Carden to him, not to the Court of Shadows' secret lair." And they're like, okay, yeah, that's valid. That's fair. Let's figure out what we're gonna do. So they start talking about what they want to do since they have possession of the missing prince. And they're kind of talking about Carden like he isn't sitting right there. And most of their plans end kind of badly for him. So he's like, whoa, guys, like, I can be useful. You want money? I can get you money. And then he unknowingly gives us another piece of the Liriope puzzle. She's back. Carden tells us that Liriope was never pregnant with the High King Eldred's baby. She was pregnant with Dane's baby. And yes, that does mean that Dane was sleeping with the same girl as his father. Nasty, nasty, nasty. After Dane got Liriope pregnant, he was like, oh my god, my dad is gonna know that I've been sleeping with his consort. And so his brilliant solution was to have her and their unborn child murdered. But Dane didn't stop there. He started using the same blusher mushroom to poison his own father so that he would get weak enough to want to abdicate the throne and pass the crown down to Dane. He knew that he would be the one to get the crown because he's the eldest boy. Get it? Because he's literally not. But yeah, a secret villain. I think that one of the sadder things about this whole situation is that Dane ordered the ghost to poison Liriope and her unborn child with blusher mushroom. And once the spy crew finds out that it was the ghost to kill her like that, they kind of look at him a little bit differently moving forward. So the spies are leaning towards selling Carden to Baelkin for like a shit ton of money and just getting out of there. But Jude doesn't want to leave. Even after all of this chaos, what she really wants is power. And so she wants to stay and fight for it. And the spies are kind of like, okay, I mean, you're a little crazy, but if we stay and still get a whole bunch of money and power, then okay, like, that's cool with us, I guess. And now that Jude has a clear goal, use Carden to get power, she starts to focus more on Liriope's puzzle because she knows that she's still missing a few pieces of information and that it has to be relevant to everything that's going on. She asks the spies when Liriope was poisoned, and the ghost tells her that it was 7 years ago, after Dane got a prophecy from the stars. The prophecy said that if Liriope's son was born, Prince Dane would never be king. So Jude is like, okay, I'm gonna stew on this some more, and I'm gonna go talk to Maddox and see where he's at in all of this. So you guys keep the prince here, and I'll come back with information. And the spies are like, aye, aye, Captain, as long as you come back by tomorrow. When Jude gets home, Vivi is there waiting for her, and she's like, oh my god, you're alive, thank God. And they go up to Jude's room so that she can finally change out of her coronation dress and put on better clothes for war strategy. While she's changing, Jude has this moment where she kind of looks around at her childhood bedroom and thinks about the seriousness of the decisions that she's making, and she's like, what am I doing right now? But then she hears Taryn downstairs and she realizes that Locke is at their house right now talking to Maddox to get permission for Taryn's hand in marriage. And she has this like That's So Raven style flashback to all of the clues she got that Locke and Taryn were seeing each other behind her back. And all of the fatigue from the coronation is washed away and replaced with fury. The next scene is one that's kind of emotionally heavy, like it's this really charged moment between sisters that's been building up for a while now, but to me, I laughed. Like, it's kind of funny. Basically, Jude feels like Taryn chose Locke over her, so she's like, are you happy, Taryn? You got everything you wanted and you made me look like a fool, and so now we are going to fight. And then she tosses Nightfell, the sword that Maddox gave her, over to Taryn, and she like pulls one off the wall and she's like, duel me in the living room right here, right now. Like, the drama of two fighting sisters is truly unmatched. And it kind of brings their journey through this book as foils to a head because they made exact opposite decisions. Jude decided she was done playing by the rules of the Fae. She wanted to fight back. She wanted to earn power in her own right, despite what the world told her she could do. And Taryn decided that the best way to secure a place in the court was to marry, was to play by the rules of the Fae, was to prove that she could walk among them and fit in. And now both girls are forced to face the fact that even though they're identical twins with really powerful shared experiences, they chose exact opposite paths and don't really understand each other and maybe aren't as close as they thought they were. Jude ends up taking a nasty swing at Taryn, and Vivi, who's watching from the sides, pulls out the big guns. She uses her fairy magic to enchant them to stop. She says, "I said stop. Now stop." And Taryn freezes, of course, but Vivi doesn't know that Jude made that special deal with Dane, and so fairy enchantment doesn't work on her, and her sword keeps moving. She barely manages to swing it out of the way, so Taryn is okay, but Jude is now pissed that Vivi would dare to try and control them that way. Some of Maddox's servants pull them apart, and Jude and Taryn scamper off to go wait for Daddy Maddox to come give them a stern talking to. While they're waiting for Maddox to come yell at them, they kind of have this very sisterly makeup moment where Jude makes kind of a bad joke and Taryn giggles at it even though it's not very funny, and it's kind of like nobody's gonna apologize right now, but things are gonna be okay. Then Daddy Maddox enters the room and he's like, "Taryn, listen, Locke is an idiot, and I don't think that you will be happy if you choose to live your life with him, but that's your choice. So if you want my permission to marry that idiot, then you have it. Just don't ever, ever put him above any of your family members ever again." And then Taryn is dismissed, and so she runs off, and it's Jude's turn, which starts out so awesome. Let me read it to you. "Let's talk about your behavior tonight," says Maddox, leaning forward. "Let's talk about your behavior tonight," I return. She's kind of got him there. He did just stage a coup against the High King of Elfame. And Maddox is like, "Ooh, you saw that? Ooh." And Jude's like, "Yeah, what was that about?" But Maddox basically just says, "You know what? I'm glad I did it, and I would do it again. And also, if you know where Cardin is, bring him over to me. I will give you whatever you want. Literally whatever you want, even if that means having Locke to yourself, or if that means killing Locke. I don't care. I'll give it to you if you give me the missing prince." But he doesn't actually know that Jude has Cardin in her possession, so she changes the subject. She's like, "Okay, I thought you were going to be mad at me about dueling my twin sister in the living room." And he's like, "Jude, do I really need to warn you of the dangers of fighting your loved ones like that?" And yeah, he is referring to the fact that he murdered their parents. So Jude asks, "How do you sleep at night?" And Maddox is kind of like, "This is my nature. It's just who I am. And I can't change that, so I'm not going to fight it." And there isn't really anything Jude can say to that. Afterward, Jude is in her bedroom and Vivi comes in to kind of half apologize for enchanting her. And then Jude half apologizes for being an idiot. And then Vivi gives her a new offer. She's like, "Listen, things are crazy here, and they're not going to get any better. I want you and Taryn to come live with me and Heather in the mortal world. And if we all live happily ever after in the mortal world, you don't have to be the you that you are when you're here in Elfame, in Fairyland." And Jude is kind of like, what if who I am when I'm here is just who I am everywhere? So now Jude is considering what the spies want, which is to get as much money as they can out of Carden and then get out of there, and what Vivi wants, which is to go to the human world as fast as possible. But both of those options kind of feel like running away to Jude, and she doesn't want to run away, but she doesn't really know what the right path forward is yet, and so she does the most dramatic thing that she possibly could. She pulls out that royal signet ring that she stole off of Carden's finger, and she puts it on her own hand. Yeah. The next day, Jude has a little chat with Miss Oriana, who tells her that Maddock and Baelkin are hosting a feast tomorrow and that she must attend. And Jude notices something familiar on Oriana's dressing table. A little golden acorn that looks just like the one with Liriope's message in it. And she starts to think about Liriope's puzzle again. And when Oriana first got married to Maddock, it was about 7 years ago, right around the time that Liriope was poisoned with blusher mushroom. And she thinks about how fast her baby brother Oak was born, and how none of the sisters were allowed to visit him after he was born because he was too sick. And she thinks about how uncomfortably protective Oriana has always been of Oak, and how maybe she misunderstood that overprotectiveness. She thinks about the message in the golden acorn and the prophecy of Liriope's child. If the boy is born, Prince Dane will never be king. She thinks about the fact that Maddock, who values family and loyalty above all else, betrayed Prince Dane. And she realizes Oak is not the son of Oriana and Maddock. Oak is the son of Liriope and Prince Dane. But it doesn't end there, because if Oak is Dane's child, that means he's a direct descendant of the royal bloodline. And so if Maddock can get the blood crown onto this 7-year-old child's head, that would mean that Maddock would become king regent, and so he would be the one to rule Elfame, which has been his plan all along. Use Oak to get the throne. And that is the answer to Liriope's puzzle. Little baby Oak. Oh my god. It is crazy. It's crazy. And Jude, just having had that realization, is like, Oriana, you need to tell me everything that happened. It's urgent. And we finally get a clear picture of what happened in the past. When Oriana and Liriope were both consorts to the High King Eldred, they were also besties. And so Liriope told Oriana that she had started sleeping with Dane and gotten pregnant, and then she was subsequently poisoned by Prince Charming himself. So Liriope sent out her acorns when she knew that she didn't have much longer to live, and just hoped that somebody would find her and be able to save her baby boy. And it was Oriana who found her when she was on the verge of death and cut the baby out of her stomach, naming him Oak to honor Liriope's golden acorns. And yes, imagining Oriana cutting baby Oak out of his mother's stomach does make me cry every time. After Oak was saved and Maddock found out that it had been Dane who had tried to kill his own son, Maddock was pissed. His whole thing is family and loyalty, and so this hatred toward Dane inspired this whole plot to get the crown onto Oak's head so that Maddock could have power. Jude turns to Oriana and is like, you know that Maddock is trying to get Oak onto the throne, right? And she's like, what? No, Oak is just a child. And Jude says, I was just a child once too. I don't think Maddock was enormously concerned about what I could handle then, and I don't think he will be too worried about Oak now. But yeah, the thought of little baby Oak having the blood crown on his head and Maddock having unchecked power is kind of horrifying, so the girls are reeling a little bit. But Jude knows that she is in a pretty powerful position right now because there are 3 Greenbrier heirs left: Baelkin, Carden, and Oak. And she has possession of one of them. As we know, Jude is a hungry, hungry girl, and she's got a craving for power, so she is not going to let this opportunity pass her by. She could be the person to choose the next High King, but putting that crown on her 7-year-old brother's head does not feel like a great idea. So we know she's going to do something, but we don't yet know what it is. When she gets back to the Court of Shadows, she does not like what she sees, because Carden is sitting at a table with the spies and they're laughing and drinking and gambling, and she's like, guys, what is this? You know that he's literally supposed to be our prisoner right now, right? But the spies are like, come on, Jude, chill out. He's not so bad. He's harmless. And Carden's like, yeah, Jude, I'm harmless. Join in on the fun. She does not like that. So she drags him back into Dane's office and ties him up again for another round of questioning. Carden is basically cowering in the corner of the office, but he can't stop smiling, and Jude doesn't like that very much, so she stalks around to the other side of Dane's desk and pulls out a crossbow, pointing it right at him. And he's like, please don't shoot me. I swear, I'm nervous, and I smile when I'm nervous, and you're like very scary to me. And he says, I'll tell you whatever you want. Jude does feel a little bit bad for him since most of his family was just murdered very publicly. So she puts the crossbow down and she starts to ask her first question. She's like, okay, so I found this really interesting piece of paper. It had my name written on it over and over and over again. And Carden is embarrassed, to say the least. He's like, that's not a question. Do you want to ask me an actual question? Then I'll answer you, but that's not a question. So Jude's like, fine. Okay, tell me about Taryn and Locke. When did they first start getting together? And at this point, to me, it is truly comical that a girl in the center of the politics of Elfame is asking the missing Prince Carden questions like, why are you so obsessed with me? And when did your friend start hooking up with my sister? Anyway, he tells her that it was a few months ago that Locke romanced Taryn very traditionally. And then when Jude prods him a bit, he's like, okay, yeah, Locke stole my girlfriend right out from under me and then dumped her for a human girl and then two-timed the human girl. So I'm not really happy about the way that things went down, okay? And then Jude asks him, why do you want me dead? And he's like, what are you talking about? I don't want you dead. I don't want anyone dead. That's not really my thing. So Jude's like, fine. Then why do you hate me so much? And he gives us this beautiful speech. He says, very well. I hate you because your father loves you even though you're a human brat, born to his unfaithful wife, while mine never cared for me, though I am a prince of fairy. I hate you because you don't have a brother who beats you, and I hate you because Locke used you and your sister to make Nicasia cry after he stole her away from me. Besides which, after the tournament, Balkan never failed to throw you in my face as the mortal who could best me. And again, Jude is like, that's it? So he's like, fine. Most of all, I hate you because I think of you often. It's disgusting, and I can't stop. Jude thinks he's kidding at first, but little Carden looks so shameful in the dark corner of Dane's office that she's like, oh my god, you're serious. You're telling the truth. And if there's one thing Jude loves, it's a little game. So she stalks herself around Dane's desk until she's standing in front of him, and then she puts a dagger to his throat again and leans down close enough for a kiss. And when she sees desire in his eyes, she says, you really do want me, and you hate it. And then she does what all of us are least expecting. She leans closer and she kisses Prince Carden. While the moment is euphoric for readers, it's kind of a jumble of emotions for both Jude and Carden, who are like, ew, why do I like this so much? But when they pull apart, Carden gives Jude an offer. He basically says, look, do whatever you want with me. Sell me. I'll put the crown on Balkan's head. I don't care. When this is all over, though, I just want to be promised some land very far away from here so that I can live out the rest of my life in peace. And Jude's like, okay, I'll think about it. The two of them shamefully leave Dane's office, and the rest of the spies are like, okay, do we have a plan? What are we gonna do? And Jude says, not yet. I'm gonna go think about this a little bit more while you guys write down everything that you would want out of any kind of bargain with Madoc or Baelkin or whoever. And then she takes a walk and she thinks about what the future would look like if she handed Cardan over to Madoc or if she handed him over to Baelkin, and what the kingdom would look like then and where she would go. The conclusion that she ends up coming to is that the best case scenario would be to get the crown onto Oak's head, but then to send Oak to the human world for like 10-ish years so that he can be raised away from the cruelty of fairyland and then hopefully come back later on and be a good king with good morals. Now that she has a plan all figured out in her head, she heads back to the lair, but only the bomb is still awake. And so she asks the bomb, "Where are you gonna go when all of this is done?" And the bomb is like, "I thought you had a plan. I'm sticking with you. I want to stay here." And Jude is kind of like, "Oh, they really trust me." And the bomb says, "Yeah, but it would be really great if you could just kind of fill us in a little bit more." And so Jude says, "How do you feel about stealing the blood crown of Elfame right out from under everyone?" And the bomb is like, yeah. That sounds sick, let's do it." Then Jude goes to wake Cardan up so that she can tell him about his part of the plan and also make a little deal with him. So they both steal back away into Dane's office where they are both clearly still thinking about that little smooch from earlier, but this is game time, all right? So Jude offers him a deal. She explains the whole Oak situation and how he is a rightful heir of the Greenbrier throne, and she wants Cardan to put the blood crown onto Oak's head so that then he can go to the mortal world and be raised as a normal kid. And Cardan will get everything he asked for. All he has to do is swear himself to Jude with a magic fairy oath. And he's like, "You're joking, right? Why would I swear myself into your service? We're on the same side. Why do you even need me to do that?" And Jude says, "How do I know I can trust you not to go back to the brother who raised you? I just need you to swear yourself to me and I'll give you everything you wanted." And he's like, "Okay, fine, I'll do it, but only for a year and a day." And then he kneels down in front of her and says, "Jude Dewart, daughter of clay, I swear myself into your service. I will act as your hand. I will act as your shield. I will act in accordance with your will. Let it be so for 1 year and 1 day and not for 1 minute more." And then the deal is officially sealed. Now that Jude's plan is starting to come together, there are a couple of things she needs to check off her to-do list. So she and Cardan head to the outskirts of the land. So everyone that came for the coronation is kind of all camped out in this one area. And because the coronation was a bloody mess and no one has the crown yet, they're all kind of sticking around to see what happens. Jude and Cardan have come to this camp area because they're going to need some support if they're going to be putting the blood crown on someone's head other than Baelkin's. So Jude is planning to approach the court of moths and ask for their support, and she plans on sneaking into their encampment. In the meantime, Jude commands Cardan to stay where he is using this new fairy magic that she has over him, and she heads into the camp of the court of moths. Honestly, there isn't really much to say because she pretty much fails like immediately. She doesn't even make it to their queen. She ends up just stomping back over to Cardan, who tells her to try the court of termites and the Alder King's son. Let's talk about the politics of Elfame for a second here, and why Cardan is a bit of a genius. The way that Fairyland is divided isn't talked about in huge detail in this book, but basically there's the High Court, and that's what the High King of Elfame rules over. And then under the High King are all of the different courts and lands that swear fealty to the High King and the Blood Crown. All of those courts get the benefit of being under this massive kingdom, but they also have to abide by the High King of Elfame's rule. Then there are the courts in the lands that don't swear their fealty to the Blood Crown, and they operate and govern themselves completely independently, but they don't have the support of the High Court behind them. Cardan here is suggesting that Jude talks to two courts that are not a part of the High Court and have no current allegiance to the crown. This would mean that they have less to lose by joining Jude, because if she succeeds, then they have a really powerful connection to the new High King, and if she fails, then they just go back to governing themselves like nothing ever happened. And two good options for Jude to appeal to are the Court of Termites, led by Lord Royben over here, and the Elder King's son, Severin. The Elder King has apparently been exiled, and so his son is taking over and doesn't know if he's going to swear allegiance to the crown or not. So off Jude goes, first to appeal to Severin, the son of the Elder King, and it goes a little bit better this time. Severin basically says, you know what, this is an interesting situation, but I don't want to back you if nobody else is backing you. So if you can get someone else to support you, then I'll sign on too. And Jude says, okay, bet. And she heads over to the Court of Termites to talk to Lord Royben. When she gets to Lord Royben, she basically explains to him that she doesn't want someone as awful as Baelkin on the throne, and that sounds pretty good to Royben. Like, he doesn't love Baelkin's energy, and so Jude tells him that there's going to be a real coronation happening tomorrow at the feast that Maddock and Baelkin are hosting together. So all Royben has to do is show up at the feast and give the new High King his oath of allegiance. It takes a little bit of convincing, but she does win Lord Royben over under one condition. The new High King is going to owe him a favor. Any favor he asks for. And Jude says, okay, sure. As long as we have the power to give you what you want, we'll owe you one single favor. And just like that, Jude has the power that she needs behind her to actually make this happen. Jude and Cardan head back to the Court of Shadows to explain to the spies the whole Oak situation and their plan for the crown. Their biggest concern is Maddock, because he's gonna be pretty angry when he doesn't become the king regent and get the power he was planning on. And an angry Daddy Maddock is a scary sight. But in all of the excitement of planning for the future of Elfame, Jude realizes that she has something very important she needs to tell her sister Vivian. So she heads home, packs a bag of her things, and finds her sister Vivi, and then does something that surprises all of us. She tells the truth for once. She tells her that Maddock is trying to get the crown onto Oak's head so that he can have power over the kingdom, and she says that Vivi needs to take Oak to the human world to raise him to be a good, normal kid instead of taking Jude and Taryn. Vivi doesn't love this plan, considering she was also a fairy child stolen away from Maddock, but she can't come up with any better ideas, so she agrees. And then it is the next day, and we return to a now familiar place, Cardan's childhood home, Hollow Hall. It's time for the feast. And let me tell you, Jude feels pretty dang powerful, strutting into this new coronation with the missing Prince Cardan on her arm. Jude and Cardan meet up with Baelkin over at the wine table, and it's very clear that Baelkin doesn't really understand the powerful role that Jude is playing in this whole situation, because he kind of just tries to dismiss her, like, what are you even doing here? But Daddy Maddock, on the other hand, does recognize the power that his daughter Jude is holding in the current moment, and so he slides into the conversation thinking that Jude is still on his side, which she finds very amusing. So she grabs 2 goblets of wine and offers them up to Maddock for his choosing, and he grabs one, no questions asked, which seems like an insignificant moment, but will be important in just a second. Maddock sips on his goblet of wine, and Baelkin asks Cardan to just get it over with and crown him. But Cardan is like, brother, the party has only just begun. And then Cardan and Jude make their way to the dining table, where they run into Princess Nicasia. Haven't seen her in a little while. But Cardan just tells her, for your own good, babe, stay away from me tonight, okay? Then Jude kindly breaks down her plan for the evening into 5 simple parts for us. First, get in. Second, get everyone else in. Third, get the crown. 4, put the crown onto Oak's head. And 5, get out, which means that step 1 has already been completed. So Jude makes her way over to Oriana and basically just tells her that she's doing her best to protect Oak right now. Then for part 2 of the plan, getting everyone else in, Jude heads out into the hall of Hollow Hall, where she plans on meeting the spies. But she is then approached by Daddy Maddock. Here we go. Maddock is a little upset that Jude didn't just bring Cardan to him, but Jude is like, I thought you might say that, but I know your plan, and I know all your secrets now. And Maddock is like, whoa, who are you? Okay, what do you want? What's your plan here? Is it really such a bad idea to have your dear old dad on the throne? And Jude is like, yeah, kind of, because it wouldn't be you on the throne, it would be Oak. But you're just using him as a means to an end, and he's ultimately going to be affected by all of this. The conversation is really leading nowhere, and so Jude pulls out her sword. It's time for father versus daughter. Maddox is like, Jude, you're a little girl. You cannot beat me. You literally can't beat me. And Jude is like, oh, I already have, Dad. Because that goblet of wine that she handed to him just a moment ago was poisoned, and he doesn't realize it until it's too late. So Jude knows that the only way to win this sword fight is to drag it out long enough for the poison to take effect. And then as soon as it does, Maddox realizes what's happened, and he's like, how did you do that? How did you know which goblet of wine I would choose from you? And Jude says, I didn't. I poisoned them both. Mithridatism, baby. Jude is just able to outlast him, and when Maddox can't fight anymore, she looks down at him and says, Father, I am what you made me. I've become your daughter after all. But don't worry, Daddy Dearest will live to fight another day. It was not a lethal dose of poison. Now that he's taken care of for tonight, though, the spies are free to slip in through the window and commence phase 3. Get the crown. Jude heads back into the party to find Balkan and tells him that Maddox is going to be a little bit delayed for a while now. And then, we run into our old friend, Locke. Little old Locke pulls her aside and is like, hey, I just wanted to say that I really did care about you, and I kind of still do. Jude, who is a little bit busy with more important matters, is like, dude, shut up and leave me alone. And he's like, come on, I heard you dueled over me. And Jude is like, that was not about you. What are you talking about? And stalks away to go find Carden at the dining table. She sits down at the table beside Carden, and what do we have here? Another classic Jude Carden moment? Carden leans back in his chair looking at Jude and says, have I told you how hideous you look tonight? And Jude says, no, tell me. And he says, I cannot. Fairies can't lie. Just then, the dinner officially begins, but before Balkan can make his welcoming toast, boom, an explosion bursts out and surprises everyone. And the spies from the Court of Shadows seem to be trying to murder Carden? They fire arrow after arrow at Carden's direction. But it's pretty clear to us from the beginning that it's part of their plan because none of them quite manage to hit him. Balkan, of course, starts to panic because Carden is his only means to the throne. So he dives on top of Carden trying to protect him, and all of the chaos that's broken out allows for the spies to take control of the room. They lock the doors and it's time to grab the crown, but Jude is in the midst of a bit of an existential crisis and she misses her cue. And instead of Jude grabbing the blood crown from its display, it's the ghost who grabs the crown and he throws it to Jude's feet. But that's not Jude. It's Taryn, her identical twin. Immediately Jude realizes what's happened and she's like, oh my god, Taryn, please give the crown to Vivi, who's standing nearby holding the hand of little baby Oak. Balkan's on his feet at this point and he's like, Taryn, if you don't give me that crown, I will murder you. And that is a little bit scary coming from the guy that did just murder his own family, like in front of the entire kingdom. So she's a little bit nervous. But our guy Lord Royben steps up and blocks Balkan so that he can't do any murdering. And suddenly the room is in a bit of a stalemate, just waiting to see what Taryn will do with the crown. Jude steps up to Taryn and takes a hold of the crown, and Taryn is like, what's going on? And Jude says, please, just trust me. So she takes the crown and she hands it to Prince Carden. Balkan doesn't really know what's going on because he doesn't know about Oak, but he doesn't like where this is going. So he starts to try and plead to Carden, like, dude, you don't even want the crown. You don't want to rule. Let me do the hard work. You can live in luxury. But Carden looks at his brother and says, no, I don't think so, brother. And now the time has come and all of Jude's pieces have fallen into place. She has the power to crown Oak and send him to the mortal world. Jude hands the crown over to little Oak and tells Carden to kneel down and show Oak how to crown him. And so Carden kneels down, and the crowd in the room gasps because they have no idea who this little kid is and how he plays a part in all of this. And while Carden is still on his knees, Jude bends down to whisper in his ear, "For the next full minute, I command you not to move." Carden freezes. He has to. She has that power over him. Then Oak lifts the crown and places it onto Prince Carden's head. He says, "I crown you king, high king of fairy." Yep. Just gonna go ahead and add that. Carden is not happy about what just happened. He glares at Jude, knowing what she's done to trick him, but not being able to do anything about it. When he finally unfreezes and stands up, a cry goes out through the room as everyone kneels down to their new High King of Fairy. When they rise, he looks over at Jude and says, "And to Jude, who gave me a gift tonight, one that I plan to repay in kind." And then the partying begins. The bomb finds Jude and tells her that the spies have finally come up with her code name as a spy for the Court of Shadows. Jude fully expects her to say the liar because that's her specialty. But the bomb says, what else? The Queen. And that is the final chapter. But I'm so sorry, it's not over yet. There is still an epilogue. The epilogue takes place in the human world where Jude is shopping with Oak and Vivi in the wonderland that is Target. We find out that Oak and Vivian are officially living in the human world with Heather, and also that Maddox is absolutely furious that Jude has bested him, and Jude is living in a constant state of anxiety and denial of that anxiety. Jude goes back to the fairy world and she finds the new High King Carden sitting on his throne, and he looks horrifyingly like a real high king. Carden reminds her that she only has 1 year and 1 day of power over him, and then who knows what will happen. He gets up from his throne and says, "Come, have a seat. This is what you wanted, isn't it? What you sacrificed everything for? Go on. It's all yours." And that is the conclusion to The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. So the first book in this series has ended with 3 royals left, 1 new high king, and a mortal girl who just put him on the throne, and she has a very full mind. Thank you so much for watching this video. It was absolutely a labor of love, and I would really like to get to do it for the rest of the series as well. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope that it made sense. And if you did like it and you want to support my channel, you can always let me know in the comments below, or give it a like. Give a subscribe, you know how it goes. But thank you. And thank you again to the artists who let me use their art for this, which is so cool. I'm seriously so honored and grateful, and I think it's time to go eat some ice cream and go to bed. Bye.